Just give me one second.
Right, if anyone's listening to...
What do you mean by scientific materialism as an ideology, JonJon?
I think he's talking about like philosophical naturalism, more or less like hard, strong atheism.
Like, basically, I think that scientific materialism, at the core, there's a claim that what you cannot measure isn't real. And I think that's actually been a devastating idea for the psychology of humanity and society.
Why?
Don't get me wrong, science has given us quite a bit, obviously.
Why is that devastating? Why is that devastating?
Because it allows for crazy ideas that are also very dangerous to emerge. For example, nihilism, secularism.
How are those? I don't see the connection.
Like, for example, if you're going to take the position that it's not real, if it's not measurable, then even consciousness is out of your reach, right? Like, consciousness just becomes some crazy epiphenomena, or whatever you want to call it, like some crazy shit. We can't even talk about consciousness, I guess.
Is that what?
But
that's not what material. JonJon, that's just a straw man. That's not what materialism says.
No, like I'm saying scientific materialism as an ideology, not just merely materialism.
Right. It doesn't say that if you can't measure it, it isn't real. That's not what materialism says.
What about scientific materialism?
Yeah, JonJon,
it
the
doesn't
whole
say
idea
that.
behind materialism is that the only things that exist are material things.
Brenda, do you think if JonJon's wrong, it's any value just simply saying he's wrong without actually giving the right answer?
Hold on really quick.
Do you think... Hold on 1 second, Johnny. I'm almost done. Brenda, if you know the answer, why don't you just go ahead and say, no, you're wrong, and then share the answer? But sitting there like a fucking professor holding back the answer is just a way...
Based off what you said, I think that what I said still applies. Like under that,
Concrete asked me a question.
Measurable aren't taken very seriously.
Concrete asked me a question, and the reason that I approach things the way I do is to encourage more discussion.
Yeah, JonJon. Even though Brenda's being like really hair splitting with you. And I think that she's sort of technically right. Like I kind of get what you're getting at, which is that, like, you know, if everything is material and only the things that exist are material, then everything that's material is measurable. And if you can't measure it, you would arguably say it doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. I think that's a type of thinking that was very popular and influential, and actually ended up causing some really negative things in terms of psychological, like I'm strictly speaking psychological negative things. Like
I don't think that there's
for example, when we say things like when Nietzsche was talking about the death of God and how, like, you know, atheism and secularism kind of be hurting us. We have evidence that shows that secularists are like basically going extinct, and that might be bad.
I think that might.
I don't, JonJon. I don't believe that atheism is harmful, and I don't believe secularism is harmful. Right? So you haven't shown. You haven't shown. So JonJon, just 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. You haven't shown. You haven't shown. 1 second. 1 second. Concrete. 1 second. 1 second. Concrete. Concrete. Just 1 second. Concrete. I was talking. Concrete.
Hear you fucking
concrete. Concrete.
Tell us why you
concrete. Concrete. Just 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second here. Just one more fucking second. Okay? All I'm saying. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. All I'm saying, JonJon, is you haven't shown a connection between these deleterious things that I don't even think are deleterious and materialism. You just haven't done that.
Okay, well here, how about this, Brenda? So do you think that nihilism can be deleterious?
I'm not sure. What's the argument that nihilism is harmful?
I mean, I could run a kind of a consequentialist argument in the sense that if you believe that there's no inherent meaning to life, then thus there's no inherent meaning to your life. Thus, there's no reason not to do harmful things to yourself or others. Thus, you could kill yourself or cause harm to others.
So I would deny the second. I would deny the second premise.
Really? Why?
Well, the fact that I think that there's no ultimate meaning doesn't mean I can't have meaning in my life.
That's still
just to be clear. I think the worst aspect, one of the worst and most influential aspects, is when people get into hard determinism, and then they start to think that no matter what they do, it doesn't matter because they can't change anything.
So why is determinism harmful? I don't see how that follows.
Nietzsche was right. I think that Nietzsche was right when he mentioned that the common man needs religion to provide structure in his life. I think that it's a very rare type of individual. It's a very rare
I don't think so.
That
it's also.
Can I just finish? It's a very rare type of individual that can go through their life without the structure that some sort of ultimate spiritual how would I put this obligation and structure provides. I think that the majority of people cannot operate outside of some kind of framework that provides some kind of ultimate consequence or something or other like.
You're just saying
well, Brenda, it's my turn. I just want to say one thing, and I'll let you guys talk. I'm just going to say it's also the fact that a lot of people get like really bad raw deals, right? And there's a lot of injustice in the world. And what the Bible teaches is that don't worry, your reward will come later. It will come in the next life, right? And that's a very very consoling thing to hear or to believe, even if it's not true. Right.
Yeah. Just because there's injustice doesn't mean there can't be justice. And just because a lot of people feel that they need a deity, and Nietzsche said so, it doesn't mean that necessarily people need to believe in gods in order to survive. These things are just not connected.
Look, Brenda, what is the value of truth? Why should we value truth?
We should value truth because it allows us to do things such as create medicines that help people, create technology that allows us to survive better.
But why is any of that inherently valuable? Why should we create medicines? Why should we help people? Why should we use technologies?
Oh, there's no in necessary connection, but the fact we want to.
It seems like your argument falls apart. It seems like your argument then.
I'm not arguing for. I'm not arguing for objective morality.
But this is where.
I'm not. That's not what I asked you. I asked you what is the value of truth? Why should we value truth? And it seems like your argument falls apart at the first step.
No, I'm not arguing for objective.
Brenda just supported Nietzsche's view.
Yeah, basically.
Because you took up arms with science and positivism, and now you believe in positivism and science, not just for the sole value of truth, but because of something. It's last man tier. So
exactly.
Like Nietzsche broadens ethics and to any behavior. It's actually very naturalistic, but he broadens ethics to any kind of behavior that will allow for more men to come about, and that's really all that religion and science actually have to offer.
Yeah, but what he wasn't so much. One last thing, he wasn't so much worried about, like, I guess I hate to use the I mean, I'm not saying this in a pejorative way, but like he wasn't really concerned that much about the common man being religious. What he was worried about was that the lions that were being ensnared in religion. He didn't want lions to like the way that Rome fell prey to Christianity. That's what his most fear was.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
I wasn't really responding to Nietzsche himself. I was responding to a straw man version of Nietzsche, which
Well,
which was that nihilism, which was claim that nihilism is a consequence of materialism, and that people should believe in gods, right?
Well, I think that nihilism in some way or another. Well, materialism kind of like holds its own, but I mean it depends on the way in which you're structuring it. Because I think that people like Strauss and Feuerbach understand this really well. That materialism is really hard for them, and on top of that, but you do have people that actually find it easier. Well, this is where like materialism becomes it has some like veil or some like almost zeal to it, where it's like it's almost religious to an extent.
I was simply making the point. I was simply making the point that under materialism and the fact that there's no objective meaning to the universe doesn't mean that I cannot have confer meaning and value to my life on my own.
I wouldn't disagree
but that's
with
just
that.
incoherent, though, because
I don't. Well, Avram, I just wanted to ask you real quick. So, don't you think like scientism is just another form of Christianity? Like it's just another religion?
Yeah, no, it literally is. Same as materialism. Like, dude, irony in materialism.
Yeah. But I mean, to me, it just seems like an off branch of Christianity. I mean, because they don't believe in God, but they're still practicing Christian morality. Anyway, that's all I'll say. Sorry, I don't disagree with Brenda.
Christian morality, what?
Well, I think like the fattest thing for science and positivism is this idea of Aristotelianism that is kind of like
yes, I concur.
Over. Yes, dude.
yes.
Dude, Young, do you even know what we're talking about?
No, but I concur.
No, but like, okay, well, actually, I'd like to get Young's take because I think Young's actually a Marxist. Are you?
Sorta.
Yeah. So I think that there's like a huge irony when Strauss says that we have to see Christ as being historical. I think that irony is that I think there's actually three things that I wanted to address, but yeah, Dio, I completely agree with you. Like, just the way that Catholicism and Scholasticism has been shoved into philosophy with the breakdown of actual religious values like ethics and the belief in God, I think that's really telling of where.
I mean, like when I mean like a man of the academy, or at the university, I really don't see any difference between that man who claims himself to be an atheist or agnostic than a Christian. Like their morality. I mean, I think even Jordan Peterson said the same thing. He said something like, "I don't believe in God, but I act as if I do," and I think that's a huge problem.
Well, that was like really trendy in like the 20s, right? You had people. I really think that ordinary language philosophy and people like Wittgenstein, which Wittgenstein was heavily influential. I think that that's really important in understanding where we are at today and the way we understand metaphysics and our outright, like in the Anglosphere, our outright rejection of metaphysics or anything to do with ontology, outside of maybe something dealt with in epistemology or what remains apparent in like a very Kantian sense. So. Right. It's kind of like we're just fucked over at this point.
We need a clean slate. That's what we need. We need a tablet.
I honestly think in the case of Jordan Peterson, at least, like he just flip flops on purpose. He just does it for whatever moment is advantageous for him at the current occasion.
Yeah, he's a grifter. He's a grifter. He's a true grifter.
Brenda, I don't
Mitt Romney shit. Like he just flip flops.
I don't disagree with Brenda, though. I don't disagree with you finding personal meaning in your own life that's outside of a world that may or may not be meaningless.
Yeah, that's all I was saying. All I was saying, and it was in response to JonJon. That's all. Well, I wasn't making any broader statements than that.
Well, Brenda, I hope you don't mind, but I actually do have a qualm with that because I think it's kind of incoherent.
What is incoherent?
Because if evaluation or like normative evaluative sense is a part of the world, and you say that the world does not have or sense or value does not have objecthood, it would still remain of the world. So it's kind of incoherent to say that the world is not does not have inherent value, because that value is inherently recursively identified with itself, right?
I'm not sure I understand.
But if you want value, you must place value on something.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Well, what I'm saying, I would agree with you, but I think that to think of it to the extent that the world has no value, I think, is incoherent.
I'm not saying that. I'm never saying that. I'm saying it could or could not be. But go ahead, sorry.
Well, I'm not. I still don't quite understand. I'm just saying that things can matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that that's a big deal.
Well, no, it's. I mean, it's not a big deal by any means.
Okay.
But are you
ultimately nihilistic? I mean,
Are you an
what
epicomic?
what is the value of what you value?
It's simply in relation to me.
Yeah, so ultimately it's just myopic and self-centered and ultimately meaningless.
Ultimately, sure, but for
Mhm.
me,
Yeah,
for my
so
time,
there you go, you're a nihilist.
I don't
time
care that
placement.
I'm not. I'm saying that there's no contradiction in saying that there's no ultimate meaning. For me to say that I can have some meaning that is limited and relative to myself, rather than ultimate.
No,
I
I'm
think
saying
it's safe.
that you can't have meaning. Like I said, it's just myopic and
Why?
self-centered.
Why can't I have
Can't you
meaning?
just
Just
be
because you feel one way, it doesn't mean that it has any meaning.
What do you mean?
Can't you just
I don't.
You're just feeling something.
just remain agnostic?
I mean, it's
and just say you don't
ultimately
know.
just It's just ultimately just chemicals in your brain cascading around and for no meaning
Yeah,
or purpose whatsoever.
but Ace, if she remains agnostic about it, it's not going to be the case, right? I don't. Are you saying that the world's meaningless outside of your own?
Well, I don't think
Your
that.
own.
I don't think that I'm a materialist, right, or a physicalist, or however you want to put it, naturalist. I don't think that the world has ultimate meaning. But my saying that
Okay, I
that
wouldn't
it
go that.
doesn't have ultimate
I wouldn't
meaning,
go that.
yeah,
Okay,
I
I got
don't.
that.
But
I got that.
okay,
I just wouldn't
okay.
go that. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go that strong. I think that's just too extreme to say that you know that the world doesn't have ultimate meaning. That's just too strong of a claim.
Well, I think meaning is something that we assign to things, objects, states of affairs. Something that
Oh.
agents assign meaning to things.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly kosher to say that if God doesn't exist, that there is no meaning in the world.
It's just an agreement. For instance, a red light means stop, but that's just an agreement, right? And that's a meaning that is just assigned to a red light at a stoplight.
Wait, say that again, Ace, please.
That if God doesn't exist, that there's no meaning in the world. I think that that's a fair inference to make. I think that's something that Nietzsche taught.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that at all.
Okay.
I think
I
it
don't know. I'd have
depends
to
what
think
you
about it.
talk.
That's a good. I mean, that's a good point. I would have to think about that.
I think that
I don't even. I don't think. But I don't think Nietzsche. I don't think Nietzsche would. Nietzsche wasn't a nihilist. I don't. I mean, I think you know that, Ace. I don't
No.
think
Of course, Nietzsche. No, Nietzsche was an anti-nihilist. Of course.
Right, but I don't think. I don't think that he thought. He thought. I mean, it's funny enough, but he was actually arguing Brenda's. He believed that
Yeah.
you needed the Superman to create
yeah,
meaning. Right?
yeah.
Yeah, but that still succumbs to nihilism ultimately. That's
Well, no, I don't think that's nihilism about meaning. It's just like a different view of meaning.
I'm not saying that it is nihilism. It's just that it does succumb to nihilism.
I think there's.
I just think that the type of meaning, right, that you would have in a godless world just wouldn't be the same kind of meaning that you're talking about when you're talking about a world where there is God or something. I think it's just different things.
Well, right, and that's
Because
what I was saying. That meaning becomes myopic. It becomes self-centered, and ultimately meaningless.
yeah, I think the idea is at least the way I see it is that when atheists say, and like what I would say that meaning is something that you project onto things, right? As like an agent, you project meaning onto things, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily selfish either. I can take meaning in my community, in my social network, the people that I care about. So I can exist within a community of people and derive meaning from that. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have. You said selfish.
I never said selfish.
You just
Actually,
did.
No, I didn't. Gosh, clean out your ears, Brenda. I said individualized.
Well,
It's funny how these things are synonyms in your mind.
What's the difference? What's the difference between the purpose, Brenda making the meaning and a purpose in the world, and God making meaning and purpose in the world? You're just shifting meaning and purpose. Why is one better than the other?
Well, the whole idea is that, I mean, with God, every single person that's on this world was individually created and is a child of God with a meaning imbued in them by the Creator Himself, and is being guarded and cherished and shepherded by this ultimate Creator. And in a world without God, that's all just in the mind of man.
Well, that meaning is pointless. Why is his needs and wants make it purposeful? I mean, all you're doing is just putting on what he wants to have and what he thinks is deserving. Then there's no meaning or purpose in there. You're just
no, but I don't think, like, the point is that I think at least the way I look at it, and I don't think it's like something incoherent, is that if there is a God, right, there still is the kind of meaning that we're talking about in the godless situation, as in we can project things that we value onto things, so that, like, I don't know, like something that I value becomes meaningful to me, like my sense of community or some hobby that I have or some shit like that. But on top of that, right, there's a greater direction that things that don't concern my mind are also headed to, right? That's like kind of the meaning that I would imagine, like God would confer onto things.
Right,
The
exactly.
idea is that he has like a power to direct things in a certain direction or something, like towards a certain destiny or some shit like that. I guess that's what people mean by meaning in the God scenario. And it's just that if God doesn't exist, then you're kind of like deprived of that kind of meaning, but you still have your kind of meaning that's contingent on your mind. You know?
Right, and there's also the whole notion of the closeness of God, where God is right above you, watching you and making sure that things in your life happen in a way that is necessary for your development. And when you reject that notion, you're just left in a meaningless, spiraling void of just utter despair.
I don't see how that follows at all.
I don't see that either, because you're putting what he wants, what he thinks your life should be, the way he thinks your life should go. He's the one choosing how your life is meaningful and purpose, which makes your life actually not worth anything. It's just a play toy for some God.
That's just nonsense, Bob.
Hey, but all the shit you just said is nonsense too. I listen to you, and your mouth just rambles.
No, look, Bob.
Spewing shit.
Again, Bob,
look, if you want to give me honest criticism, explain why it's wrong, that's fine. But just to tell me that's nonsense shit, then
Bob, look, I just think that you're just not equipped with the prior.
I'm not. I don't understand philosophy, and I don't understand half the words you guys are saying.
Yeah.
But I still would like to be in the conversation. So don't treat me like a piece of shit and a dumbass. Be a decent person and explain things to me.
Look. If you wanna learn, you gotta listen.
But look,
well, if you want to teach me, then don't teach me like shit and actually teach me decently.
I think it's a pretty easy concept to get. Let's see if we can do it. Like, right. And I'm not saying this is right, by the way, but maybe I can try to explain what I mean. So, like, when you're saying that something is meaningful to you, Bob, right? I think what people are saying when they say that is merely that something in the world, right, is going to hold some importance to you, given that thing is like an object of your desires or something, right? You understand that? As in something like, I value my community, right, or my community doing well. Therefore, working with my community or doing whatever group activity with my community becomes meaningful to me, right? Understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, but so that's one thing that I think is like dependent on like what you value as a person, right? Merely what you value, right? Because something wouldn't be meaningful, I don't think, for anyone if it didn't concern any of the things that they want to see realized in the world, like their desires and stuff. And so there's that one concept, which is to say that you start perceiving things as meaningful when you see them being something that fulfill kind of your values or something. That's one way of thinking about it, which is what I think is left to us if we're atheists, right? But then I think that there's this broader concept that would hold if God existed, which is to say that you could value things in the first way that I mentioned, but there would also be some kind of objective meaning to the world, some direction that the world was heading in, which is completely independent of the way we value things or the things we think about the external world. It just, by itself, even if we didn't exist, right, would have some meaning, some trajectory, right?
But how would that be objective?
As in...
It's just some other mind, right?
Oh,
just
yeah.
happens to be God's.
Well, yeah, that's true. But
so
yeah, that's true. I'm just
that's how
true.
Some people can say that it's not more meaningful.
No,
even if there is this extra mind out there.
No, I understand. But my claim isn't that it's more meaningful, right? My claim is just that I think they're different. They're different kinds of conceptions, as in that it's not something that pertains to our human desires in that sense. As in, if I find something meaningful in my life, right, as in my sense of community, it's because I have some attitude towards that action or activities that I may do in that field or something, right?
Right.
Whereas,
as opposed to there being another mind that wants you to do stuff.
But the thing is
lots of other minds that want me to do stuff besides this a possible one called God already now.
Helen, you deny absolute objective. Like you deny. Are you completely in denial of like an objective morality? You don't think that's even possible?
Well, depends on what you mean by objective.
I still don't understand why you.
I just want, Helen, I want to talk about this later, but not right now. But yeah, I just think there is like a possibility that does exist that maybe you haven't thought about. But anyway, I'll talk to you later about it.
No, but I think Helen made a good point, or really, I mean, but I guess I want to stress that I probably agree with that kind of meaning would still be dependent on someone's mind. But the thing is that I was just trying to draw the distinction in how personal one kind of experience is in terms of valuing things or finding things meaningful is, and how the other notion is like kind of more detached from whatever we feel, just in that sense. You get what I mean?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I still don't understand how you would just come to the conclusion that you require God in order to have an ultimate meaning.
I think we all agreed that we would have meaning.
I don't get how you come to that conclusion.
Yeah, but we didn't make that claim.
You're saying that there's no objective value without God.
No, I actually, what Helena said, what I was saying I agree with is that it's probably not objective. It's not objective, but the way I'm thinking about it, even if God exists. But I didn't make the claim that meaning wouldn't exist if God didn't exist.
No, I'm not saying, I guess I'm not being clear. It seemed to be that, at least when Ace started speaking, that the claim was you have your own desires that are subjective, and you would base your values, your actions on that you desire that note, but without God, you don't. You know what I mean? Like you don't have an objective standard to base those values on as well.
The idea is supposed to be that, but for belief in the existence of God, we risk falling into nihilism, right? But the thing is, believing in God doesn't rescue you from nihilism. So that just is false.
Right, that's your point, but I also don't understand how you can't find without God. Why? I mean, if there is an objective, ultimate, like, authority morality, meaning is created by God, I don't know why you would assume that that can't be created by anyone else. Why are you making it necessary for there to be a mind in order to obtain, right?
Right. The idea for why people bring that up, what they are claiming, is that that's a way to escape nihilism. But so because there's this other mind out there that has like desires for you, and it's some kind of special mind, in that it somehow can manipulate reality or something like that. That's supposed to be better, such that you don't risk nihilism. But that just seems false.
I think another important premise to that is that mind is perfect, right? But let me give an example. So, say that ultimately the only reason why everything in the universe doesn't is because
the only reason why everything doesn't, and then you cut out.
Ultimately end. Like, you understand what heat death is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no reason to believe that everything doesn't just stop, right? But it could be that the only way to escape it is through living things. And so we might not necessarily know this to be the case, but you could believe that and find ultimate meaning in surviving and trying to advance as a living being.
Well, what would be ultimate about that kind of meaning?
Well, that would be what is definitely going to happen. That's why you exist, and that's why the universe itself exists.
It's kind of hard to follow sometimes.
No, it would be. It's not true, right? I'm making it up.
No, I mean,
but I could
I
could believe that.
I mean, you're cutting in and out an awful lot, but I understand you have a lot of background noise, but it's still a little bit difficult. That's all I'm saying.
Sounds like what you're saying is
I'm driving.
Sounds like
okay.
It kind of sounds like you're giving an example of a way a person could find meaning. So you're kind of giving like one particular answer to the existential woe we're all supposed to be in, and that is that we all want to survive or something akin to that. But so yeah, that could be, but that seems like just like one possible way that each individual person can find meaning and therefore escape existential woe or something like that. But so it's, and I think that could be a way. But I think it's going to be up to each person. The point I want to make is that the Jordan Peterson types are very afraid that the loss of religion means we're all going to fall into nihilism. But that to me seems false, because believing in a God doesn't seem to rescue us from nihilism in any kind of way. In fact, it might even be worse. Might even be worse. I mean, so we're going to live forever after we die. Wow, that's great. I mean, come on. The whole reason why we have desires and extreme emotions and things like that is always related, in my opinion, to the fact that we are going to die. We have limited time. That's why the choices that we make are so important to us. So it gives them their importance.
So, Helena, I mean, this is not this is not originally created by Jordan Peterson. So, are you familiar with Will Durant? He's like a famous historian. He wrote the stories Western Civilization. And
yes, I know it doesn't originate with Jordan Peterson.
This is what
I just use that. I just use that shorthand because there are people in this Discord that attribute that kind of sentiment to Jordan Peterson.
Okay, so fair enough. I just want to read this real quick by him. He says, Hence, a tension between religion and society marks the higher stages of every civilization. Religion begins by offering magical aid to harassed and bewildered men. It culminates by giving to a people that unity of morals and belief that seems so favorable to statesmanship and art. It ends by fighting suicidally in the lost cause of the past. For as knowledge grows or alters continually, it clashes with mythology and theology, which change with leisureliness. Priestly control of arts and letters is then felt as a galling shackle or a hateful barrier, and intellectual history takes on the character of a conflict between science and religion. Institutions which were at first in the hands of the clergy, like law and punishment, education, morals, marriage and divorce, tend to escape from the ecclesiastical control and become secular, perhaps profane. The intellectual classes abandon the ancient theology, and after some hesitation, the moral code allied with it, literature and philosophy become anti-clerical. The movement of liberation rises to an exuberant worship of reason and falls to a paralyzing disillusionment with every dogma and every idea. Conduct deprived of its religious support deteriorates into an Epicurean chaos, and life itself, shorn of a consoling fate, becomes a burden alike to conscious poverty and to weary wealth. In the end, a society and its religion tend to fall together like body and soul in a harmonious depth. Meanwhile, among the oppressed, another myth arises, gives new form to human hope, new courage to human effort, and after centuries of chaos builds another civilization. So what I'm trying to say here is that, yeah, we're just going to die if there's no religion. I think.
We're going to die if there is religion.
I mean, that's the way that's what some people believed, right? But if you actually look throughout history, religion tends to be the killer of civilization.
No, I don't think that's true. I think West is dying for the very fact that we have become secular.
So, do you understand that there was once an Islamic state?
Sorry for that butchered meat. Too much coffee. What? Sorry, say that again.
Do you understand that there was once an Islamic state? I'm driving. Can't really.
Do I realize that there was an Islamic state? Okay, so.
There was an Islamic state at one point.
There was or there wasn't? I don't know what you're saying, dude.
There was.
I don't understand. Okay, fair enough. So what?
So, Islam was the container of pretty much all of man's knowledge.
Okay.
At one point in time.
So which point?
And why did that collapse? Why did civilization collapse?
That's actually kind of overstated, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not saying that in all situations, I'm not making a necessary claim that if you have religion, your society will not die, or your state will not die, or your nation will not die, or whatever. What I am saying is that the absence of it is for sure it is necessary that people die. That's
you haven't made that case.
I don't know of any examples where like the absence of religion.
I think if you actually
listen, guys, it's really simple. Listen, there's plenty of evidence to show that secularists aren't having kids. That means they're gonna go extinct, you fucks. That's what you're looking for here, right?
You're kind of just rambling.
Dio is saying that without religion, these people will die off, right? So these atheists who can become like secular humanists, secular thinkers, they're not having kids anymore, you fucks.
I mean,
there's no evidence for that.
That means their fucking ideas and lineage are going extinct.
That's not true. That's just not true.
It is true. The more educated you are, the less children you have. The less educated, and the more
religion's gonna have a comeback.
Okay, but John,
that's the reason why. Almost done, and I'll shut up. I swear to God. That is the reason why I think the Pope is. I mean, I think he's an anti-Pope, but that is the reason why the Pope is appealing to the third world, because he realizes that Nietzsche is correct, that religion, as we know it, is dead in the West, and so he's trying to keep Catholicism alive by reaching out to the third world.
But here's the thing: secular humanism actually failed, right? We wouldn't be having so many secular countries that do well.
Just to be clear, though.
Of well-being.
This is also a fun fact. This is also leads to a lot of
You're interrupting Wolf in the middle of a sentence, JonJon.
Why are you interrupting? But like, if you're confident, you can let me talk. I mean, look, it's no real controversial thing to say that religious commitment is lower in countries that have scores of well better off, like on well-being in terms of income inequality, in terms of GDP, in terms of every aspect of well-being, from crime, corruption. Like all of these are low when compared to the most religious countries. Like, that's simple.
That's more of a byproduct of like scientific materialism and what it's given us in terms of technology. But what I was going to mention, right, is that the idea that the Western world, like we in the United States, we're not really religious anymore. Like, that's actually why like a lot of people hate us so fucking much. Like, they hate our guts.
I don't think that's why. I don't think that's why.
Take the Muslims, for example. They come over here and get pissed off about stupid shit that we let girls walk around with cleavage and shit. Like, that makes their blood boil.
But JonJon, I think the bigger point is that the church created the cohesion for our particular race, whatever you want to call it, tribe. And then if you dissolve the church, you're going to atomize the individual, becomes atomized and loses his community. And that's exactly what's happening right now. That all our communities are being dissolved, and I think largely in part because the church is.
Well, just to be clear, like I was trying to mention yesterday, like people like Alan Watts. The reason why, if you guys know Alan Watts, the reason why he was so famous or so popular and had such influence is because he was reconciling Christianity and like Eastern philosophy, right? And Jordan Peterson's doing the same thing, but for in the Western world, right? Like, Jordan Peterson and Alan Watts are a lot alike.
That actually,
that they're reconciling like the war that Nietzsche was talking about between science and religion. Like, notice how Jordan Peterson's stolen half the New Atheist fan base. That's a fucking miracle, right?
That actually makes me somewhat hopeful, because Alan Watts is pretty much recognized as just a nobody. And that means that Peterson will likely join the ranks of the nobodies.
The doors to spirituality for
nobody reads Alan Watts anymore. Nobody listens to him.
Men have a metaphysical need that's.
Well, just to be fair, the guy died like over fucking half a century ago.
Yeah, there are people who are dead that people still read and still find influential.
Shakespeare died.
And I think a lot of people still like Alan Watts. I bet there's fucking Alan Watts YouTube videos being uploaded every day.
Oh my god, Alan Watts YouTube videos? No way. I mean, there's BoJack Horseman YouTube videos. Fucking what?
I can get more out of BoJack than Alan Watts, definitely.
Listen.
You guys are missing the point. Do we have such good content that you guys just can't grasp? Right? You mentioned how Jordan Peterson is very much alike
the point, which
Alan
is
Watts, and how they try to combat this war of ideas or the war between science and religion.
Only an absolute.
And you guys start ranting on about dumb shit. Listen, Jordan Peterson, right, has an IQ of like 160.
JonJon,
he's
the only guy who
learned
looks up at
so
the sky and
much
sees the
from great thinkers like Nietzsche and all these old great thinkers. He's learned tons from them. And what's so interesting about people like Jordan is that he's carried on. He's picked up the torch and he's carried it on. Like, he's picking up where these great thinkers left off. And you guys have no respect for that process, right? You guys are so fucking clueless.
And set fire to himself with the torch.
JonJon, when you say we can't grasp
there is a diminishing number of people every day who have any respect for Jordan Peterson, and it's getting smaller every day, not bigger.
JonJon, when you say we can't grasp something, does it make you angry that we understand it but don't accept it?
It just makes me angry that there's such a huge. Listen, what I'm aggravated at is that the intentions. We're dealing with bad faith interlocutors, right? For lack of better words, like, these ideas are some of the most important ideas.
No, we just don't. We just don't agree with you, John.
People are so caught up in this blood sports like confrontation that these conversations just basically become cringe to even try to have. And like the lack of enthusiasm to even have the conversations. Like, we can talk about great understandings and really cool insights, and these people will just brush right over it because they're so caught up in like their ego or whatever the fuck it is, right? Like I said, there's bad intentions, bad faith interlocutors.
Anytime you think we can't have the conversation, you just go ahead and stop doing it.
I mean, just go back to saying